Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
See, I always wondered, why is it that UFOs never land at MIT or UCLA? They always land in the middle of a swamp where Bob Buki and his cousin Weenie are out fishing. And these two guys can never tell you anything about the UFO. It was big and yellow! I mean, you could show these two guys at Buick, they wouldn't know what was happening. See, I'd like to see a UFO land in someplace like Times Square, right? Nobody'd notice. Cab drivers be going, come on, move that thing. Old bums be warming their hands. This is nice. I like this.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, September the 3rd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now Maria and then Stuart.
Welcome back. 30 minutes before the opening bell sounds for Wednesday. We got a market that is mixed today. Dow Industrial's now down 110. The S&P and the NASDAQ higher. The NASDAQ up 150. Let's get some final thoughts from this all-star panel. Adam Johnson.
Well, Maria, the NASDAQ is up this morning because Google is up about 6%. And I'm thrilled with the result. Google had been the subject of a lawsuit that has effectively been dismissed. It's a Biden-era lawsuit whereby the FTC was trying to go after Google because it was too big. That's such a typical Joe Biden Democrat approach. Just go after big business in theory because that means you're standing up for the small guy. No, totally wrong. That thing has been dismissed. They wanted Google to break up, which was absurd, and I more like that.
But you made the point earlier that the reason this is important is because the Chrome business represents 95% of their revenue.
That's the absurdity of the whole thing.
So, to split the Chrome business off of Google, you're taking away all their revenue.
Yeah. The Biden administration was trying to make the argument that you've got to split Google. Well, there's nothing to split. 95% of their revenues is Chrome. So, it's like you're splitting the company to just split the company. Stupid.
Yeah.
Thank goodness those people are no longer in Washington.
Stock is up 6% today. Tiana, final thoughts.
In April, investors thought they couldn't live with the tariffs. 5 months later, they can't fathom the idea of living without them.
You're right.
What does this mean? One, they haven't proven inflationary, at least as long as they remain in this limited, 15% range. But also, fiscal dominance is the name of the game. Trump is delivering the growth, but it will be up to Congress to make sure that if the Supreme Court overturns the IEEPA tariffs, that you bring in more revenue or that you cut spending. The growth is great, but we got to keep the deficit under control. Otherwise, there's nothing the Fed can do.
By the way, the president alluded to this yesterday, basically saying that the markets are trading down because of the uncertainty after this federal appellate judge's ruling.
Exactly.
And we had a guest, Steve Chevrion from Hermes, Federated Hermes, earlier saying, the bond market wants that revenue in place because it's actually cutting into the debt. And if it goes away, bond yields are going to spike.
Yeah, and they just want to make sure that we don't have this endless increase, a deficit to GDP ratio. And the fact is, the tariffs, they aren't compensating for everything. But last month, we brought in more customs revenue than we did corporate income tax revenue. And that corporate income tax revenue is only as high as it is because of the original Trump tax cuts. So it's not just a matter of we can tax our way purely out of this. It's a combination of, can we do smart taxes, keeping 15% import taxes, those work, and then grow, baby, grow.
Yeah.
And you know what? We can live with 10 to 15% tariffs. They're not that onerous.
That's right. And I think now business understands that.
Yeah.
And understands what President Trump has been trying to explain for the first 6 months.
It was, creating leverage against trading partners. And it's working.
There you go. And it's working. Yeah. Great to have you guys today. Adam Johnson, Tiana Lodesha, thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. I will see you soon. I'm off on a trip tonight. Varney and Company picks it up right now. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. It's not Democrats blocking President Trump's agenda, it's the courts. The latest is an appeals court blocking deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. Another court ruled the use of troops in Los Angeles is illegal. Court action is also expected if the president orders the National Guard into troubled cities like Chicago. In particular, Trump wants to undo the block on his tariff program. He's asking for an expedited ruling from the Supreme Court. If the court does not take his case or rules against him, heaven forbid, expect chaos as companies demand a refund of tariffs already paid and trading partners undo the agreements that have already been made. There is another big story, and it's about Google and what to do about its dominant position in search. A federal judge ruled that it must hand over some search data to rivals, but the companies does not have to be broken up. AI is a factor in this. It now offers competition in search. Investors really like that ruling. The stock is up about, 6.89%. Huge gain. That is helping the tech-heavy NASDAQ to go up at this point about 0.6%. The Dow and the S&P relatively flat. Bitcoin moving at $111,000 a coin right now, 111.1. Interest rates moving up a little. The 10-year coming at 4.28, above 4.25%. That's the key benchmark. The 2-year 3.66. Another record for gold, $3,619 an ounce. It is a safe haven, and it responds well to rate cut talk. Another record there. On the show today, a big court win for the president and EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. The environmentalists will not get access to the multi-billion-dollar slush fund, that's what I'm calling it, that Biden had set aside for them before he left office. Zeldin said the $20 billion is vulnerable to fraud. The environmentalists are livid. They were counting on the big bucks to fund climate activism way into the future. The Wall Street Journal publishes a report on America's billionaires. There are now 1,135 of them, with $5.7 trillion in wealth between them. The left will jump on this, but significantly, only 1/3 of them inherited all or much of their money. This is it, America. This is an entrepreneurial meritocracy. It is not like Europe. One last one. Radical Congresswoman, Democrat Ilhan Omar, and her husband are now worth $30 million. That's a 3,500% gain in the last year. How did that happen? It is Wednesday, September the 3rd, 2025. Varney.
And that was Stuart Varney, Varney and Company, Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. So the last couple of paragraphs from an article called "Don't Forget the Local Judges" from the American Thinker. Why aren't we talking more about the judges? They are the problem, not the party affiliation of the mayor. All those Democrat mayors have judges who release these criminals and keep the vicious cycle going on. Also, sending the National Guard will stop the criminals but not address the core problem, from bad judges to fatherlessness and schools graduating kids who can't read or write. Unfortunately, most of these Democrats do not have Mayor Johnson's courage in switching parties, because he did not believe that the Democrats have solutions for these core problems. So, several things. First of all, again, other than there's one instance where he says from bad judges, he doesn't use bad, good, right, wrong. Okay, the R word, the W word, the B word, and the G word. So let's do these two paragraphs again, doing it correctly. Why aren't we talking more about bad judges? They are the problem, not the party affiliation of the mayor. All those Democrat mayors have judges who release these criminals and keep the vicious cycle. All these Democrat mayors have bad judges who release these criminals and keep the vicious cycle going on. Also, sending the National Guard will stop the criminals but not address the core problems, from bad judges to bad fathers to bad schools who graduate kids that cannot read or write. Unfortunately, most of these Democrats do not have Mayor Johnson's courage in switching parties because he did not believe that the Democrats have solutions for these core problems. Now, these two paragraphs, and this is supposedly by a conservative, gives a nod to something, a philosophical theory called determinism, which says that nobody's responsible for their actions because everybody's behavior is forced on them by powers beyond their control. So, and that's just simply untrue. And again, he needs to use the words bad, good, right, wrong in order to be able to make a point. If he doesn't make a point, then there's no reason to write the article. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Jerry Wayne Live.
L.A. Red Fire, nor horned demons. No, sir, it's his flute. Played wrong, eternal. The melody limp and pitiful as a hound too tired to bark. Your call is important to us, the machine says. Though I reckon if it was important, they'd have answered sometime back in spring when I first dialed, and by now, the bluebonnets done bloomed and died and bloomed again. I only called to ask why my bill rose up like the Trinity River in flood, creeping month by month, swollen with charges unnamed, mysterious fees, they whisper like scripture. Broadcast fee, regional adjustment, line item obfuscation, words without meaning but heavy with cost. And so I wait, pressing 1, pressing 2, pressing 3, a pilgrim wandering the endless hallways of some courthouse of the damned where no judge sits and no clerk answers and the only law is music on loop. The minutes drag long as a sermon that won't land, heavy as heat in August when the air don't move. And I reckon this here is the true shape of life itself. One long hold line, music circling without mercy, while Comcast counts the seconds and charges me $20 more for the privilege of listening. And I know someday when the trumpet sounds and the graves open, I'll still be here on hold, listening to that same flute, and Comcast will be waiting at the gates with a frickin' late fee.
And that was Jerry Wayne live with A Texan Waits on Hold with Comcast. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, a little bit of motivation.
I don't know what that dream is that you have. I don't care how far-fetched it might appear to be. I don't care how disappointing it might have been as you've been working toward that dream. But here's what I know, that dream that you're holding in your mind, that it's possible. See, sometimes we can't say, I can do that. But what we can say, that it's possible.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, meditation.
Welcome to this 5-minute meditation designed to help you harness the power of gratitude for true change. Find a comfortable position. Gently close your eyes and take a deep breath in. Exhale slowly and allow your mind to grow still. Take 2 more deep, slow breaths, each one bringing you deeper into calm. Now, imagine yourself standing in the center of infinite abundance. See streams of golden light pouring down from the universe. Flowing from the angels of wealth into your life. Imagine money, opportunities, and blessings raining down on you, surrounding you, filling every part of your being. Repeat silently, I live in absolute abundance. I live in absolute abundance. I live in absolute abundance. Let this vision become so real that no other thought can exist in your mind. Now bring to life the exact experiences you desire. See deposits flowing into your account. See customers arriving with joy. See successful deals, wealth coming to you in countless forms. Feel it in your heart as if it has already happened. Allow yourself to smile, to feel the joy of receiving spending, and investing with freedom. And now, step fully into gratitude. With passion, repeat silently, "Thank you, thank you, thank you for the wealth I have received. Thank you for the opportunities, the success, and the abundance in my life." Let this gratitude expand inside of you, overflowing with energy, joy, and certainty. Know that every thought creates a wave, and every wave returns to you multiplied. Carry this feeling beyond meditation. During your day, recall this vision and emotion to stay in the frequency of abundance. Do this practice 3 times a day for just 3 days, and you will be amazed at the results. Take one last deep breath in. Exhale gently. And when you are ready, softly open your eyes, carrying abundance and gratitude with you into your life. Thank you for joining this session.
And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. So the media has done this shtick now about whether or not Donald Trump was, whether or not he died over the weekend. So I heard about this on a talk show just a few minutes ago where they played clips of the news media asking him in some kind of press conference about this. Did you hear that there are people that were saying that you were, over the weekend, they were saying that you were dead? Okay. This is an arbitrary claim and it needs to be shut down. And the best way to shut it down is to simply deny it. Okay. So if somebody comes into my house and says, "Hey, it's raining outside," that's an arbitrary claim. I can accept it, I can verify it for myself, or I can just simply reject it. I can say, "No, it isn't." And that's what should happen here. Just simply deny it. So I would say to the person, "No, it isn't." Now, if they go outside, they come back in, and they got water drops on their jacket, and they say, "See," then I can say, "What's this supposed to prove?" Because all they're doing is trying to back up their original arbitrary claim with an additional arbitrary claim. The fact of the matter is, I don't have to accept an arbitrary claim. I don't have to take your word for it about anything. And you don't have to take my word for it about anything either. Usually the way it's going to work is based on trust. If I trust the person that walks in and says it's raining outside, I'll take their word for it. But I don't have to. Okay, and Donald Trump should be doing the same thing here. When they say, "Saw people over the weekend said that you're dead." No, they didn't. Well, it's written right here. What does that prove? Okay, and the more often you keep doing that, the less likely they are to give you these silly, ridiculous, arbitrary claims to begin with. It'll shut it down in the long run. Somebody comes into my house, says, "It's raining outside." I say, "No, it isn't." And the next time it's raining and they say, "Well, I'm going to go in and tell Ron it's raining." "Oh, that's right. Last time he didn't believe me." Why bother? Okay, same thing here. And they're doing it to play games, and he doesn't have to play the game. Okay? Just that simple. Back in a minute. Thank you. So, Harvard was there was freezing of grant money to Harvard because whatever the reason was, but it was done by the Trump administration, and I'm not a big fan of Harvard. So as far as I was concerned, good. I'm glad they stick it to Harvard. Great, all the better. But anyway, so Harvard sued and claimed that this was a violation of their First Amendment rights or whatever, and the court just ruled in their favor and said that it was illegal for the court or the administration to withhold the funds. Two things about this. Number one is the separate but equal. Donald Trump has to remember he doesn't work for the courts. The courts are not the boss. Okay, the people are the boss. People elected him. He's got a job to do, and he's going to do it. Second thing is, if he wants to avoid all these lawsuits, the best way to do it is with doing audits. Okay, if he wants to withhold money from anybody anywhere, he can do it legally. They can't touch him. They can't argue about it by simply saying this organization or this state or city is irresponsible with its money. It's been irresponsible with federal funds. The state of California threw away billions of dollars during COVID, giving unemployment money to people that didn't live here, people that were in prison, that kind of thing. They just threw the money away. That would be an excellent opportunity for the Trump administration, to say, audit. You're not going to get a fucking nickel from us until you've completed an audit. Okay, and you could do the same thing with Harvard. We have reason to suspect that you're diverting funds, okay, that are supposed to be going in a certain direction, meant for a certain thing, and you're diverting them to these anti-Jewish organizations. So we're going to conduct an audit, and until that audit is complete and we're satisfied that everything you're doing with the federal government's money is above board, you're not getting a nickel. And he can do that. There's not a court in the land that can argue with it. Okay, and that way he avoids the whole constitutional crisis crapola. Okay, it's nice and easy. So, there you go, for whatever it's worth. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Candice.
Combien vous payez pour que ça soit colissimo contre signature, plus de 15 € avec la poste. Qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait? Ils mettent dans la boîte aux lettres de la dame, alors qu'à la base c'est contre signature, et ils ont volé les talismans. Alors je vous explique, bande de cancres de la poste. Ces talismans, c'est simple, vous les prenez alors que c'est pas à vous, je vous renvoie le bowling de la foudre sur votre gueule, parce que ça appartient à la personne. Donc, c'est-à-dire que vous touchez à quelque chose de mystique. C'est pas compliqué. C'est-à-dire que quoi qu'il arrive, vous croyez que vous allez avoir le pouvoir, entre guillemets, de la connaissance et compagnie. C'est pour la personne. C'est spécial. Donc, il y a une autre dame aussi, elle était à la salle de sport. Elle avait son talisman or. On lui a volé. D'accord? Donc, vous, chaque personne qui récupère, retour à l'envoyeur, vous avez bien compris que vous touchez, vous ouvrez la boîte de Pandore, vous ne savez pas vous toucher au feu. Donc celui qui voit un talisman, vaut mieux pas qu'il le touche, il n'est pas lui. Et ça c'est pour la bande de la poste, ça c'est clair, c'est net. Vous arrêtez de voler les talismans aux gens, est-ce que c'est bien clair pour vous? Maintenant j'ai vu avec Blake Carrington, on va mettre carrément l'étiquette sur l'arrière, c'est-à-dire que si c'est ouvert, ça vient de vous. Et je veux, parce qu'on a payé un service à plus de 15 balles, et moi je rajoute de ma poche derrière pour que ça soit vraiment contre-signature, vous faites contre-signature, vous faites votre travail, arrêtez de voler les gens du matin au soir. Est-ce que c'est bien clair pour vous? Parce que nous on ne dort pas des nuits entières pour que ça arrive. En fait, vous les mettez dans la boîte aux lettres et après vous les volez. Mais vous ne...
And that was Candice. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining you're losing, mean in debates? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, when you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Jeffrey Mead.
I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat. We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented. And that was Tren de Aragua, a narco-terrorist organization designated by the United States, trying to poison our country with illicit drugs. Last year, under the Biden administration, all 4 years, 100,000 Americans died from drug-related, from drugs.
Just to give you clarification, it was over 100,000 deaths per year during Biden's administration. And the majority of those deaths, they come from fentanyl. Now, I'll let him continue.
Drugs, from the use of drugs, many of which poured in from Central and South America through our southwest border. Now, we're sealing the border, but President Trump is willing to go on offense in ways that others have not been. And to send that clear signal to Tren de Aragua, Cartel del Sols, and others emanating from Venezuela, we're not going to allow this kind of activity. You're poisoning our people. We've got incredible assets, and they are gathering in the region. And so you want to try to traffic drugs, it's a new day. It's a different day. And so those 11 drug traffickers are no longer with us, sending a very clear signal that this is an activity the United States is not going to tolerate in our hemisphere.
My man said it's a new day. I love to see it. This administration and these individuals are actually doing things. Sometimes you have to speak the language people understand. Many of these organizations understand kinetic force. They understand violence. So wagging your finger at them and telling them no isn't going to work. They're already smuggling enough drugs into the country to kill millions of people, and they're doing it illegally. Do you think they're worried about a little no? No. Now, when they start seeing trafficking boats getting blown out of the water, sends a different signal. Hundreds of thousands of Americans are dying due to what they're getting into this country. And this administration and the military are working to stop that. It's nice to see them take action and do it unapologetically. Also, just a reminder, I have a free email newsletter where I go into more detail on many of these topics.
And that was _Jeffrey Mead on his Instagram account. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, a little bit of Ayn Rand, the Ayn Rand quote of the day. Quote, ethics is not a mystic fantasy, nor a social convention, nor a dispensable subjective luxury to be switched or discarded in any emergency. Ethics is an objective metaphysical necessity of man's survival, not by the grace of the supernatural, nor of your neighbors, nor of your whims, but by the grace of reality and the nature of life, unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter The Objectivist Ethics from the book The Virtue of Selfishness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Apollo.
Chapter 21. There was no mercy in those days. By the fall of 1967, the apparatus for controlling manned spaceflight, the MOCR, its support network, the mission rules, the skills, had been evolving for 8 years. Mercury had been elementary school, teaching the neophyte flight control team the rudiments, and occasionally showing by harrowing example how much remained to be learned. Gemini, consisting of 10 manned flights with 2-man crews during the period from March 1965 through November 1966, had given the controllers a chance to become proficient in advanced concepts such as rendezvous, extended flight, and extravehicular activity. Despite all that had been learned, however, and despite the sophisticated apparatus that was in place by 1967, it remained for the Flight Operations Directorate and ASPO to learn how to fly the Apollo missions. North American Rockwell, as it was known by the end of 1967, had produced an Apollo command module that was vastly more complicated than the Gemini capsule, with hundreds of switches that could be thrown and dials that could be turned, a profusion of data that could be computed and displayed, and thrusters and engines that could be burned in numberless permutations. Grumman was producing a lunar module that was even more novel and equally complex. These machines were going to be the first in history to carry men out of the Earth's environment and to an alien place. The question to be answered was, now what? 1. First, all the maneuvers and activities had to be planned down to the last switch setting and data entry. Then everything had to be orchestrated between the crew and ground control because, in effect, each spacecraft had 2 cockpits, the one in space and the one in Building 30. It got to be a big flap, said Jerry Bostic, who as a Fido was in the middle of it, a really bad situation between NASA and the contractors, and between the flight controllers and the astronauts about who does what and who gives who what data before the flight and during the flight, and who does what on the ground and who does what on board, and how much onboard data do you need to put on telemetry to give to the flight controllers, how much do they need displayed. The whole thing was a big mess. So George Low created a new job. On August 3, 1967, he posted a memo on the bulletin boards at the Manned Spacecraft Center announcing that Howard W. Bill Tyndall, Jr. had been appointed to a position called Chief of Apollo Data Priority Coordination. It was a typical NASA title, one that could have meant just about anything. Specifically, said the announcement, his job is to determine the operational rules and procedures for properly utilizing the Apollo systems, including primary and backup systems, to investigate the system capabilities and constraints and to evaluate their accuracies, to establish the criteria for system selection during various phases of the mission, and to establish the proper spacecraft and ground displays and use of these displays. It went on like that for a few more lines. In short, Bill Tyndall was supposed to figure out how to fly the missions. His function cut across ASPO functions, flight crew operations, and flight control operations. How he was to do it wasn't quite clear to anyone. Just do it, Tyndall was told. The name that was eventually attached to what he did was Mission Techniques. Bill Tyndall had been in the space program since Mercury days, when he had helped to set up the communications network. In the Gemini program, Tyndall had been the man who had figured out how to do a rendezvous in orbit. The mathematics of orbital mechanics and of rendezvous itself were well known. Buzz Aldrin, the Apollo 11 lunar module pilot, had written his MIT dissertation on the mechanics of rendezvous. But no one had applied these theoretical findings to the world of hardware and tracking stations, where it was essential that the ground be able to monitor and control a rendezvous. Bill Tyndall was responsible for solving what proved to be an extraordinarily complex task. It was a big deal, said an official close to the process. In my mind, one of the major accomplishments of the space program. During Apollo, Bill Tyndall had continued to be a troubleshooter, officially attached to the Mission Planning and Analysis Division, but in reality a free-floating resource. At the time that the Mission Techniques task came up, he had been babysitting the arduous and often tangled development of the spacecraft's computer software. Tyndall had the exuberance of a 7-year-old on his way to a circus. His friends were super and gangbusters and giants and really neat and just absolutely outstanding, and he didn't have any enemies. He saw the Apollo program as one great long stretch of fun that had, by some miracle, been given to him instead of work. It's just incredible that we'd get paid to do what we're doing, and all the stories about the brutal hours and travel schedules as just a cover for men on a lark. We weren't working overtime, we were playing. In the process of working with MIT on the guidance software, Tyndall had arbitrated among the FIDOs, GUIDOs, and software people about what displays had to be available to what places. This experience turned out to be ideal for planning mission techniques, partly because computer capacity was at the heart of deciding how to run a mission, and partly because the process of designing the displays had been so contentious because Apollo-era computers had storage that was ridiculously small. The one used for real-time computing during the missions was an IBM 36075. It took up 160 square feet of floor space. It had a storage capacity of 1 megabyte. Every time we'd get a new capability in the computer systems, the flight controllers would start laying their requirements on it, Cliff Charlesworth said. In short order, we'd overflow the boxes, exceed computer capacity. And Kraft would get mad. He'd say, "God damn it, get it back there where it'll fit. We can't get any more computers." So he'd go get Tyndall and he'd say, "You go fix that." Tyndall had started holding what were known as Black Friday meetings. All the people competing for computer capabilities would crowd into one of the conference rooms over in Building 30 and explain in fervent detail just why their particular needs were crucial to the success of the mission and the safety of the astronauts. We'd all get in there and defend our requirements, and then Tyndall would cut them, Charlesworth continued, and then we'd cuss him. And Tyndall would grin and cuss back and laugh his loud, infectious laugh and keep right on going. Tyndall took from that experience a conviction that the only way to resolve so many competing interests was to get everybody into the same room and let them fight it out. There was a method to the madness he induced. For John Aaron, then a young ecom, Tyndall's technique was a model for his own use in later years when he became a senior NASA official and had to do the same thing. In Aaron's view, Tyndall recognized that what matters most to people is not that they get their way, but that they feel they have had a chance to make their case. Somebody would voice an idea and Tyndall would field it, treating it seriously and yet at the same time managing to dispose of bad ideas quickly without putting anybody down. Ideas that weren't so bad were improved on around the table without bruising egos. Tyndall was able to get some very proud engineers to say, "Well, I'll be damned," when it turned out that their pet ideas weren't as good as they had thought they were, Aaron remembered. They might walk into Tyndall's meetings polarized and cultures apart, but Tyndall built them into teams. Tyndall himself confessed to no such cerebral theories. As far as he was concerned, the real secret to his meetings was that people weren't just sitting around making recommendations to forward to the higher-ups. Everyone knew we were making decisions right there, he said. Decisions that would govern the way the missions were run. And if people wanted to put in their 2 cents worth, they had better be there. It led to a madhouse sometimes, but Tyndall loved playing lion tamer to a room packed with arguing engineers. For one of the big meetings, there might be as many as 100 design engineers, astronauts, controllers, and mathematicians from MPAD crowded into the conference room in Building 5. 30 or 40 of them crowded around the long table, and another 50 or 60 sitting or standing around the perimeter of the room, sometimes spilling into the projection room as well, their faces peering out through the little projector windows. They'd hammer away at each other for hours, filling the blackboards with numbers. It became a battle for the blackboard, Tyndall recalled. Whoever would get the blackboard in the chalk, that's the guy who could win. I was really good at that. In all, there were 12 distinct phases to each lunar landing mission. Launch phase, Earth orbit, while they checked out the CSM's systems, translunar injection, mid-course on the way out to the moon, lunar orbit insertion, lunar orbit while they checked out the LEM, lunar descent, lunar ascent, lunar rendezvous, trans-Earth injection, another mid-course phase, this time on the way back to Earth, and entry. Each phase had dozens of specific elements to be worked out. By Tyndall's estimate, only about 10 to 20% of the work involved techniques to be employed under nominal circumstances. Nominal in NASA means without abnormalities. Most of the time they were worrying about mission techniques under abnormal circumstances, which in turn drove most of the specific mission rules for the Apollo flights. When is a failure, Tyndall's meetings had to ask. If the guidance platform is drifting but not completely wacko, how much drift is acceptable? How much of the backup capacity has to be available to proceed to the next step? Tyndall raced from one question to another. He'd take people like me from operations and the theoreticians and the contractors, and they'd sit in his meetings for hour after hour after hour, recalled Steve Bales, one of the guidos who attended. He'd say, okay, look, we've just got to the moon. He'd draw a big circle on the blackboard. Okay, here's Rev 1, the first revolution around the moon. What are you guys going to do? And they would begin to work out in exacting detail everything that needed to be done during the first revolution around the moon, which was one small part of one portion of the lunar orbit phase of the mission, which was in turn one small portion of the mission as a whole. Then, Bales continued, he'd have another meeting once a week that said, here's what we're going to do in the ascent phase, from LEM takeoff to insertion. Another meeting 2 times a month on, here's how we're going to do the rendezvous. One on, here's how we're going to do guidance procedures on the surface. The guy was incredible, had a 1,000-ring circus going all the time. Not all the meetings had 100 people at them. He would have smaller ones almost daily of half a dozen people. For critical phases like the final descent from 47,000 feet to touchdown, he might hold special meetings twice a week until they had nailed the techniques down the way he wanted. Out of those meetings came Tyndallgrams, so-called because they read like no other memoranda in the Apollo program. They owed their origin to a secretary, Patsy Sauer, assigned to Tyndall soon after he came to Houston. You do dictate, don't you? She said to Tyndall the first time she met him. No, I don't, said Tyndall. Well, you'd better learn because I'm not going to lose my shorthand proficiency, she announced peremptorily. I'm a meek guy and she was tough, Tyndall reminisced. And for a few days he wrote out his memos the night before and then held them under the desk the next morning pretending to dictate. But finally he got used to the idea of dictating, and then he found that the memos were sounding the way he talked. They became a sensation around MSC. Who else but Tyndall would, in an official NASA communication, describe the magnitude of a required change in spacecraft velocity as teensy-weensy? Who else would entitle a memo, Vent, Bent, Descent, Lament, or Let's Move the Recovery Force a Little, or simply Some Things About Ascent from the Moon? What other engineer at Tyndall's level would, in an official NASA communication, call a top NASA official's proposal unbelievable and proceed to treat it as if it were the work of a crackpot? The main thing about Tyndallgrams was that they said what they meant. They were wonderful, Bostic said of the Tyndallgrams. They didn't have any bullshit, this bureaucratic stuff. Since everyone loved them, including George Low, who refused to let his secretaries give him a summarized version of anything Tyndall wrote, one might have thought that everyone would have started to imitate them. Some tried, but they quit after a while. It sounded as if they were trying to be cute, while a Tyndallgram just sounded like Tyndall. About a fuel warning light on the lunar module display, Tyndall wrote, "The present LEM weight and descent trajectory is such that this light will always come on prior to touchdown. This signal, it turns out, is connected to the master alarm. How about that? In other words, just at the most critical time in the most critical operation of a perfectly nominal lunar landing mission, the master alarm with all its lights, bells, and whistles will go off. This sounds right lousy to me. In fact, astronaut Pete Conrad tells me he labeled it completely unacceptable 4 or 5 years ago, but he was probably just an ensign at the time and apparently no one paid any attention. If this is not fixed, I predict the first words uttered by the first astronaut to land on the moon will be, 'Gee whiz, that master alarm certainly startled me.'" The humor and breeziness of the Tyndallgrams were window dressing for a serious endeavor. From the first Mission Techniques meeting in October 1967 through the first lunar landing in July 1969, Tyndall's collected works comprised 8 thick, loose-leaf volumes of highly technical memoranda. These were backed by stacks of compilations of specific techniques broken down by mission phase. During Apollo 11, these are the volumes that Guido Grand Paulus carried with him to his console in just his descent binder alone. Apollo Mission Techniques, Mission G, Lunar Orbit Activities. Apollo Mission Techniques, Mission G, Lunar Descent, Revision A. Mission G, Abort from Lunar-Powered Descent and Subsequent Rendezvous, Techniques Description. A User's Guide to the Luminary Lunar Landing Programs. Ground Monitoring of Guidance Velocity Residuals During Powered Descent. Topography Profiles of Potential Apollo Lunar Landing Sites. Inserted into these volumes were another 100 pages of dense technical updates and revisions.
And that was chapter 20, and Chapter 20, Part 1 of Apollo, Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. Rocket Science. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that greed is not conservative.